Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Secret to the Sizzle Reel, using video to promote your nature photography. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Charlie Reinertsen. I'm your host, Rob Bess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Charlie, take it away.
Thanks for that introduction, Rob, and thank you all for joining today. Today's talk is going to be a little bit different than what I've done in the past for NatHab on Daily Dose of Nature. Today we're really going to do a intense tutorial of how to build short videos that you can post to social media or share with friends to be able to get more interest in your photography. I'm a professional photographer, and basically, in today's world, it's not enough just to have a portfolio of photographs. You have to be able to package those photographs into videos to be able to get more people looking at your work. Unfortunately, it's not enough simply to focus on a great Rolodex of photos. So here I'm flipping through a gallery of images that I have of wildlife photography. And when I post that to social media, we're going to go over and share a different screen here. Just a second. So here's my Instagram channel where I post all of my photography. And it's a sad place because as a wildlife photographer, it's really hard to get attention for your photography. So stuff like this, this frog maybe gets 23 likes and 1 comment, 27 on this swan. Photographs that I'm really proud of that just don't get a ton of engagement. And I was really stubborn. For a long time, I would only post images, and I refused to kind of dive into the video world. And then when I launched my business and my photography became a core component of what I do, I finally dedicated the time to shifting over and starting to do more and more video work. And that gets the most engagement. So when you go over to your Reels feed on Instagram, here's what mine looks like. And these are all your short videos. And on things like this is basically a picture of a pitcher plant, but it's actually a video. And this is the post that has the most engagement on my whole social media channel. So it's got 171 likes and 6 comments. And like 5,000 views, 4,500 views. So, my whole business model isn't driven around Instagram and social media, but it's a reality that clients will look at your social media to be able to determine, is this someone who's reputable? Is their work popular? And they'll use the numbers that they see on social media as a filter about whether or not they're going to work with you or hire you. A lot of times clients are looking for engagement on social media. And so it's no longer enough just to have a great photograph. You need to know how to package it, and that comes down to making really good videos. And so this has kind of launched me into becoming a little bit more interested in video. I'm going to play this really briefly here, and apologies if the audio doesn't come through well, but this is an example of what I would call a sizzler for the Northern Peatlands Project, which I'm not going to explain it because that's what this video does. Let me just make sure that the audio is going to be optimized for this video. Hopefully it will be. I'm just going to go ahead and play it, and then I'll put the link in the chat so that you can watch it on your own time.
They purify the water we drink. They keep our planet cool by storing vast amounts of carbon. But one thing is certain: if we don't grow a fan base for our global peatlands, these ecosystems and the biodiversity that they nourish may not persist in a changing climate. to take action on all levels to restore and protect these ecosystems and to ensure that these wild places continue to provide the astounding array of ecosystem services we depend on to survive. My work strives to bring one of the greatest climate solutions of our generation into the spotlight, to uncover the mysteries that our peatlands hold, and to ignite a sense of wonder for one of the wildest places on Earth. Welcome to our northern peatlands.
So to be able to view that on your own, you just go to twolined.com/peat. That's up here at the top. And you can set the settings so that the streaming isn't chunky and you can hear the audio a lot better. Basically, I put this reel together as an explainer for why am I doing this project, in the hope that if people watch that, they get really engaged, and then maybe they want to dive into my posts and my articles, which have all of my photography heavily featured. And to me, my primary training and my expertise is in photography, but that isn't always communicated to others because they're not going to stop and look at the photographs unless I give them a reason to, and that reason is through video. So today we're going to do a pretty intensive tutorial showing how we actually go about making a film or a sizzler like that. Today I'm really going to focus on social, like kind of a shorter video. We're not going to get into how to put together like a 2-minute long mini documentary, but the principles that we look at here are going to directly apply to that. The program that I'm using for video editing is Adobe Premiere Pro, and this program has its own interface. This is what it looks like, but you can use any video editing software, including the software that's included on your phone if you have a smartphone. And just to start, I'm just going to take a really basic example. So to get you oriented to this interface, basically on this panel over here, if you see my cursor, that's where you can drag and drop any content from your desktop into that panel. And the way this program works, similar to Lightroom, is that you need to have really good file management. So you need to have the files stored on an external drive or on your computer in a folder that's never going to move. Or if you move it, you need to know where you moved it so that you can remap your content. You can just Google setting up Premiere Pro and it'll give you a bunch of tutorials on how to do this. But if I'm about to build a video, I'm going to take my content over here. So I've divided this into different projects that we're going to do today. And the one I'm going to start with is called Heron. So I'm just going to drag this photograph into my timeline, which is down here. And all of these boxes, see how I'm highlighting blue, these different boxes? Those are all customizable. You can move them around. It gets a little bit overwhelming. I just recommend creating a workspace that works for you. But for me, I love the one that's titled Effects. So I'm just going to select that again by going to Window, Workspaces, and selecting Effects. To me, this makes the most sense when I'm editing video. So I dragged and dropped content into this bucket. It's this huge panoramic image. If I zoom into it, like at 150%, you can see this photo has a ton of detail and it's of a heron rookery. So this is an area, a beaver dam that's been flooded this big area up above the dam. And over the years, herons have used the dead standing trees to be able to build nests. Down in the right-hand corner of this image, if I zoom in enough, you can kind of see a nest on top of that tree. But this is a really cool image. It's not something that can be shared on social media. It's really hard to get this image across. The other kind of cool Easter egg in here on this image is looking at the shoreline. Those pine trees, white pines, have a lot of red in their needles. And there was a huge fire that went through this area. This is shot in the North Shore of Massachusetts. And so that's evidence of that fire that swept through this area. what I'm going to do with this panoramic image, so if you have a panoramic image that you want to share on social media, no one's going to be able to see it because it'll show up like that tiny. So I'm just going to go here, fit it to screen, and I'm going to go up into, I'm going to have to share my full screen to be able to do that. Just a second, I want to share a little bit wider view. Go into full screen, share screen, entire screen. All right, so now you should be able to see when I hover over at the very top. I'm going to go to sequence, and I'm looking for auto reframe sequence. And this is a good reminder, you have to have your content selected. So I'm going to go to sequence, auto reframe sequence. And what I want to do is set this up for a social media reel, which if you're on Instagram, Instagram's rolling over away from square posts and into a 4x5. So vertical 4x5 is going to be what's the most helpful if you want it to be a post on your feed. If you want it to be a reel, you're actually going to select vertical 9x16. But I think for this content, that's just going to be too punched in, because if you think about it, it needs to crop in full height. So it's going to be a really skinny frame, really zoomed in. So I'm going to do vertical 4x5 and then click create. I'm sure that there are shortcuts for what I do, but because I'm a photographer who has taught himself how to do video, I'm going to show you my way of doing it. And if you've got a faster way, drop a comment in and save questions for the end. So right now I'm selecting the content. It says Middleton Heron Rookery down here as the JPEG. Up here, I have effect controls. And effect controls are where I'm going to spend the most time. And position is what I'm going to spend a lot of time on with this image. So first, I just want to make sure that I'm 100% is zoomed in so that the image is filling top to bottom. And position, this is your left-right control. So I'm just dragging that. And what I want to do is position this image all the way over so that the left-hand side of the image is lined up with the left-hand side of the frame. And I'm going to close this down and make this bigger so that it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. Now, to make this image a video, I'm going to show you a really easy trick. All you do is click this stopwatch right there. And right now, this is my timestamp on the video. I'm just going to have that be at the first frame of this clip because I'm treating that image as a clip. And I just locked in that position. Now I'm going to move my playhead to the end, the very, very last frame. I'm going to move this over to the opposite end of the image. So now when I go back and I play what's existing on my timeline, this is what happens. So it's sweeping across the image. Now, a couple things are happening. That's way too fast. We don't want that at all. So I'm going to make a couple things happen. I'm going to drag this out so that it's I'm just doing some quick calculations in my head. I think if it's a 30-second long film, that's about the amount of time I want to take to get from one side of the image to the other. So I'm going to make that 30 seconds long. Along the top, you can see how long it is. So all I did was extend the amount of time that clip was going to take. And now it's still going to move as fast, and then it's going to freeze at the end. So you have to go back to the beginning, unclick the stopwatch. And if you're getting overwhelmed at how fast I'm going to repeat this process with different examples. So we're just going to get familiar with all the tools. For now, my recommendation is just watch this, see if there's anything you want to replicate. And then when the video is posted, you can watch the recording and just freeze my frame, get your screen up with what you're working on, pull this video up on another screen or split your screen and just play it, do what I do, and pause it as soon as you get to the point where I'm at. So my playhead is on the far left. I click on position, and then I move it all the way to the end, and I get it in the last frame, and I make sure that I'm selecting my content, and then I'm going to slide this all the way over to the end of the image, or maybe not the end of the image because that part is a little bit boring, I'm going to bring it right there. I think that's a good spot to stop. And now I'm going to see what happens. We're going to take a look at what that looks like by playing the footage. So even this, to me, there's choppiness. It's not super smooth. So for me, I would actually slow this down even further. So I think this needs to be like a minute long. So I'll show you all the steps one more time. And this is exactly how I would work. I haven't made this video yet. I had the idea that this would be fun to have, so I thought it would be nice to create it together. So again, I'm just locking in that position. And I've mapped my keyboard so that when I hit a certain key, it pops me to the end of a sequence. And so I've mapped A and S. So it's a go to next marker. So now I'm all the way over. Let's see, I've got to cue this up again. I'm trying to do too many things at once. So undo that. You're going to go to the beginning of the image. And I think that this part of the image is a little bit boring. So I'm going to start it there. Click on position to lock it in. Come back to the end, which is 56 seconds in. And I'm going to make it pan over to that spot. All right, so this is where we're sitting right now. And to me, that's pretty smooth. It looks pretty good. When I export this, the other thing that's going to happen is it's going to be a lot smaller on the screen. So when you look at it in a smaller view, the movement, your eye reads it as much more smooth. So to me, this is an interesting way to be able to look at this. And then I would create a post about that saying, hey, here's what a heron rookery looks like in the winter. During an early freeze in December when I took the image. And I guarantee that this video would get a lot more views, a lot more engagement, a lot more likes than just the image. But I'll show you one more trick. So I'm gonna copy that playhead and paste it. So I just did a Command C and then a Command V, and I've created a duplicate. So what you can do now, there are a couple tricks. I don't think this video is great for it, but you can right click that, do speed duration, and because it's a pano, it's not allowing you to do that. So never mind, you can't do that. But what I will do is I'm going to undo any motion. So I'm just going to freeze the frame. I'm going to shrink it down and move it into the center. And this is a trick that a lot of photographers will use where they make you watch the video and then at the very end, they're going to show you what the full picture looks like. So I'm going to copy that image again, paste it into the timeline, drag it up, bring it up to the top. And now those two images are stacked on top of each other. You can just think about building layers in the video. I'm going to select the bottom one and I'm going to make it really big. And then I'm going to come over here. This is going to click for a lot of people about like, how are people doing this? You're going to create a Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. You're going to drag that effect onto the bottom layer. And now over in your effects panel, you see Gaussian blur popped up, and we're going to blur that out. And so basically what that does is it just creates a little contrast with your image. It's basically what Instagram is already doing if you edit videos in Instagram, and it makes you focus your eye on the panoramic image itself. Now, the last thing I would do to give this a little bit more interest is that this clip is basically like, I'm going to make it like 10 seconds long, and I'm going to use the same trick where I'm going to select the top image. I'm going to select position and scale. And then I'm going to go to the end, last frame, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and I'm going to pan it left because I find that to be the most interesting part of the image. And let's see how that looks. So we're panning across in the end image, looking at that rookery. I'm going to skip ahead here. And now we're zooming in on the actual pano. And I think now that I'm looking at this, I think the way to go would actually be to reverse that so that it ends with being able to reveal the whole image. But I think you're getting the idea of how this works. basically, once you know how to use all these tools in video, you can get really creative, and all you're trying to do is make your photos look more interesting so that more people look at them. Like, one thing I'd even consider with this one, because I'm trying to fill more of the frame, is to put it on an angle. Like, there are no rules. You can do whatever you want. My only goal is that if people discover my work on Instagram, that they click on my links and it gets them to the website so that I can show them what I really want to show them, which is my published, professional work. Instagram is just a method, another marketing tool to get people over to take a look at your work. One thing I'll show you while we're in this panel, so in the Heron folder, which I dragged an entire folder into this panel, and then it's starting to pull from those files, which are stored somewhere on your computer. And when I dragged this over into the timeline, it created Middleton Heron Rookery. So just for your file management, I would name this Social Media Reel, and maybe give it a unique name up front, Heron Rookery. And then and you'll notice on the timeline itself where I'm hovering, it's showing you the name of what you just updated it to. So I'm going to close out of those. We're going to do a different example that's a little bit more exciting. So I took a bunch of footage of milkweed insects, milkweed garden insects. And so this is actual video footage, but I want to show you this because if you take a lot of video footage, you can always just use it to generate more interest, and then at the very end, you can show the image that you're wanting people to take away. So let me just drag these images in. And if you're being smart about it, as soon as you create a new timeline, you're going to name it. So I'm just going to call it Milkweed Kingdom. And let's see. So right now, just by dropping all this video footage in, it's a 5-minute long thing. So I'm going to show you my process for trimming video down just to the amount that you want. So this is the full timeline. I'm going to use this little slider to be able to drill in a little bit closer. And I'm just going to play the footage, and I'm going to find a little section that I like. I'm going to mute all the videos so that it doesn't have audio. So I'm just looking for a moment in this footage, and right now this grasshopper is not moving at all. So I'm just going to look for one little moment that I like, and once I find that moment, maybe just right there, I'm just going to use the cut tool, which is this tool over here that I'm hovering over. I've mapped my keyboard so that if I hit C, it just becomes that razor blade. And so I've separated this out. So I'm just going to bump that. That's my chosen content. I'm pushing it up onto the second channel. So this is how you start to stack different video clips. But for now, I'm just using it as a super fast way to select my footage. So I'm looking at this clip. Right now, I'm not crazy about anything that's happening there. Ooh, but look at his feet. I'm going to keep just a little bit of that because I know that my next clip is going to have a little bit more movement. So this is just one of those milkweed beetles hanging out on the leaf. I'm going to skip ahead because I'm not crazy about that. Here's a milkweed beetle, and then it's a dogbane beetle kind of hiding behind there. It has a little bit of a windy day. These guys look like cartoon characters when you get up close. So I'm just going to use that tiny clip and see if anything happens that's interesting here. The other thing you might have to do is, I'm just going to mention this here. My computer is super powerful, so I haven't had to do this, but for this particular footage. But if you're working with 4K footage, most likely the first step you're going to need to do is set up proxies. And the way that you do that is you select all the footage that you brought in, and you just say proxy, create proxies, and you're going to want to select just a small file size. And basically what your computer is doing is creating a small working file for you to work from, so it doesn't have to read the 4K version the whole time. So if you're getting lag, if you're trying to watch and it's just choppy and it's not reading right, you need to create some proxy files. So my ProRes QuickTime Proxy preset is the one that I run. But when you do this, you need to let your computer run for a couple hours. It'll take a while to create those proxies, and then this toggle button, toggle proxies, if I could select that on, it'll be running off of the proxy, and it's important to toggle it on and off so that you can then edit color using the actual footage, not the proxy. But if that was all overwhelming, don't worry about it. That's just the advanced portion for folks that are already pretty far into this. So again, I'm just going through with the razor tool and I'm trimming little portions of footage that I think are nice. And these little dogbane beetles are amazing. They're able to feed on milkweed, which is a super toxic plant that not very many species can eat. And it's similar to the idea of the monarch butterfly, where they ingest that toxin and it gives them some really amazing properties that make them hard to eat. So I'm just going to grab that little raindrop moment right there. Just going to grab that. And I think there's just one more thing I want to grab. And then this will be the image that I end on because I was really excited about that photo. So now that my footage that I want to keep is on channel 2, the footage I want to get rid of is on channel 1. I need to bump these photos up to channel 2. I'm going to select, I'm just going to highlight all of the channel 1 content and delete. And so I'm not deleting the footage off of my disk, I'm just deleting off of the timeline. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning of the footage, and the next task is just deleting all the dead space. So I'm just selecting the space in between the footage and deleting it. And this is just a quick and easy process for taking your footage and making it into a rough cut. So to me, I wasn't crazy about that. I think in a documentary, that little shot would have been cool. That was too shaky. I'm getting that one out. This is exactly how I would work. The only difference is that I'm talking out loud to kind of walk you through my process. So I think to me, that shot there was more of an establishing shot of like, oh, who is this guy, this little character here? And then the next shot shows him with another beetle. I think that's cool. Now we focus on that beetle, get a little bit closer, and actually we're going to be on social media, so I can punch into this even further because I didn't like that little thing on the side. And then, you know, going back to this, I actually like that drip scene a little bit longer, so I just extended that out, and that one was too short as well. Just going to grab a little bit more of that. And then now I'll show you a couple transitions. So I actually think this monarch butterfly chrysalis doesn't quite fit. I'm going to use this dogbane photo as the concluding image. And we're going to say that all of that footage is just driving us to this one photo that I want people to really look at. So rather than just making a social media post of just this photo, I'm going to go ahead and embed it within a larger video, which to a lot of people might feel silly, but it works. So this is just an image of that dogbane beetle sucking down that latex that gums up their mouth parts, and somehow they're able to eat the milkweed plant, which is super toxic. All right, so going back to the beginning, the next thing that I would do in this timeline, I'm feeling pretty happy about the cuts. This one's a little bit long, so I'm just going to shorten that one up. But just for the purposes of this, I'm feeling pretty good about all of this. That's a super active shot. The other thing that is really good to think about is a lot of people will save their best shot for the end of the film. And that's just poor planning because a lot of people won't get that far. So for me, this is my favorite shot. It's super active. He's really charismatic, so I want to get that up front. And then this shot is kind of the second shot. And this grasshopper, I love him, but he's not really part of the story. So there to there, grasshopper might not make it anymore. I might just get rid of him and save him for a different video. We're just going to focus on these two beetles. Social media is super quick. You really don't have people's attention span for all that long. So one other thing I'm noticing on this footage is a little bit of shakiness on this one. I think it's actually, my camera was on a tripod, but the footage is just a little bit shaky. So what I'm going to do, this takes a lot of bandwidth on your computer, but I'm going to video effects. I'm going to find warp stabilizer. So I'm just going to take that effect. I'm going to drag and drop it onto the clip that I want. And it's going to take a long time to analyze that. But when we come back, all that shakiness is going to be gone. Look at that, stable footage. There's a little bit of a focus issue in that. So I'm just going to extend this out a little bit more and see if I can find, yeah, the beginning of that clip is much more in focus. And then it gets a little soft at one point. So next thing over here, I'm going to introduce you to another panel in Premiere Pro. This panel over here is your lumetri color. Basically, it's just like your color bands. And a light touch is really important here. You don't want to go overboard in how you edit this. And I will say too that if you get really advanced in video, you're going to want to shoot raw and then use LUTs to be able to edit. There is an auto button. I usually like to select that and just see what it does. In this instance, I think it did a pretty good job. It's being really subtle in how it applied those effects, just dropping the highlights down, contrast down, bumping the exposure a smidge, and then adjusting the color balance. I like that. I think it did a good job. You can go over here to this panel, select the lumetri color popped up as soon as I started editing that. I'm going to select that, copy it. I'm going to select all the rest of the clips except for the photograph, and I'm going to do Control or Command V because I'm on a Mac. And now you'll see that once this stabilizes, it'll come back. But you'll see that it's applied that effect across all of the footage. So once you find a good setting for footage that was all taken on the same day, you can just Control Copy, Control Paste to be able to pop that over. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is this right now is not in a social media friendly format, but I'm going to show you another trick. So we've got, this is our current timeline. It's called Milkweed Kingdom. I'm going to copy that and it's going to show up right next to it. Just try that again. Duplicate. And this is the milkweed copy. I'm going to do vertical milkweed. And I'm going to double click that to pop over to that timeline. And then we're going to do what I did in the beginning of editing that photo, which is go to Sequence, Auto Reframe. And we're going to go to a vertical 9:16. We're going to create a social media reel. All right. So another thing that you can look at in this effects reel is when you do auto reframe, your computer is moving into the area where there's the most movement. I usually don't like that, and I haven't been able to figure out how to make it not do that. So I'm just going to go through and delete all the auto reframes on my clip. If you know how to tell it not to auto reframe, let me know because it'll save me some time. It's one of those things I haven't spent time Googling. All right, so now that I've deleted auto reframe, I'm going to use position and scale to get this thing in the spot that I want. So that's an awesome opening frame. I'm going to zoom out and just make sure 100% is filling the frame. On this one, it's not analyzed yet for stabilization. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to warp stabilizer. I'm going to get rid of that. It's just not doing anything for me. So I actually like the position of that, but I want to get a little bit of the dogbane beetle in the shot, so I just shifted it over to the left. All right, this one, I want to push it over this way. Looks pretty good. I actually think this image is sharp enough that it can afford to get zoomed in on. think about like where people are looking on their phones as you're cropping into your video. All this was taken, I think I mentioned this already, but 4K footage. So it has a lot of ability to be able to zoom in, because ultimately on your phone, it's just not, it's like just a fraction of 4K. So almost done here. You're getting a real in-depth look at how I do this. So the last thing I'm going to do in between this final shot and this shot, which is just silly. You know what? I don't think the rain I think the rain photos are a little distracting. Or videos. They're cool, but they're just like not part of the story that I'm creating here. So we get to this dog beetle, and then I want to transition to this shot. And a lot of photographers, what they'll do to show you the full frame of their shot is they'll position it about here. They'll click on position. Oh, shoot, sorry. First thing I need to do is get to the first frame of that segment, click on position. Now I'm going to get to the end of the photo. I'm going to slide it over to the area that I want. I mean, it's nice to see that flower, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to slide over that much. I'm going to play it back, see how fast it is. I feel like that's a pretty good speed. I like that, but I didn't like how far I went. I want to just go there. Remember, people's attention spans are terrible on social media. Try and give them what they want in this instance. And then with other posts, they might be more forgiving because you've given them some really eye candy pieces. So now I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to do the same thing we did before. So this guy is going to be centered. I'm just playing around with position. I'm going to take away the keyframe memory, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to get rid of those even though they were cool. I'm going to bring that. So now we've got two of the same exact layers. I'm going to grab the bottom one, make it really big. And then remember, we go to effects and Gaussian blur. G-A-U. You got to spell it right to be able to get it. Now you go over here to Gaussian blur, increase that blurriness to the point where you feel good. And now we just got people super engaged through footage, which is not my wheelhouse. Video is something I'm learning and I love it, but my passion is photography. So we got them there by looking at that footage, and now we're going to show them the shot. And so we got them all the way to that point. And then if you want to get really fancy, I think what I would do here is I'm going to copy both of these. So I'm going to select them, copy, paste. At the very end, when we hit this point in this film, I want the focus to really be in on that guy. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to put scale and position. I'm going to go to the end of the sequence, and I'm going to zoom in and shift over and shift up so that your final shot is just getting straight in the face with this dogbane beetle. So let's see how we did. This is a little repetitious, so I'm going to get rid of this. Let's see, which one do I like more? The second one. Oh, I like that movement. That was cool. And actually, that one looked like just a little bit dark. I wanted to see into that a little bit more. So I'm just going to bump that exposure up a tiny bit. I'm going to move the white point up, and I'm going to bring the shadows out just to be able to get a little bit more detail in that bug, because I was using all natural light. Let's see how we did. I love this opening shot. That's maybe my favorite one out of the whole reel. And where did we put it? First slide. Do not waste your content in the last slide, which is ironic because we're trying to get people to look at the image, but this is kind of a 15-second long reel. So if we give them juicy enough content, hopefully they're still with us by the end. So super cute, looking at these bugs. And now we get the shot, and then we zoom in at the very end. Boom. That's where we leave them. The one thing I'd add now that I'm looking at this is I like it. It's coming together nicely, but I'm going to copy and paste that. I like this. I'm going to take the position off, scale off, so that when it gets there, it freezes. And I'm going to give them a couple seconds to make sure they had their time with that little guy. Cool. So here's the next part in this journey. We've got a 15-second reel, and I'm going to go to export. It's called Vertical Milkweed 9x16. I'm going to make sure I know where I'm putting it. Just going to put it in social shorts, milkweed. It's all organized. And for now, I like to do adaptive high bitrate. People are different on this. Some people are going to export things specifically for social media, and there are specs out there. I actually export as high of a file as possible when I'm doing these really short reels, and then I'll post from my desktop. And Instagram, I just trust that Instagram is going to downsample the video properly, which most of the time I'm happiest with how the video appears when I do this process. So right now I'm selecting entire source, and so I've done all the automatic settings for match source, high bitrate, 9x16. If you want to see what it's doing, you just extend this out. So it's 1240 by 2160, 24 frames a second, which is what I filmed all of these at. And we're good to go. You simply export, which I'm not going to do right now, but if you check in after this webinar is done, I'll have this video posted and you can check it out at 2Line Studio on Instagram. Now, I'm going to go back into edit because I want to show you one more thing before we go, or before I open up to questions, because somehow this session went super fast for me. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for you. But you can see all the things that we've worked on are just up here unless you exit out of them. So last thing I want to do is in here. I'm just going to drop all of these into, so if you take your content, so say it's your photos or your videos, it's all over here on this little panel on the left. If I select all of it, I drag it down onto this little notepad thing, it's going to put all of those things into a timeline. And I wanted to show you this because right now it's showing different photos that I've taken. These are scans of leaves that I'm really happy about them, but it's brought them in as squares, which is what the original file is. But I'm going to delete those. I'm going to start again. I'm going to select all of my photos. I'm going to go to speed duration. This is a trick that I just found that I'm super psyched about because it saves my workflow. I'm just going to make it, you just play around. Right now I'm going to have them import at that amount of time. I'm going to drag them in. Let's see what that does. Super fast. I'm not crazy about that. It's a little bit trippy. So I'm just going to go back in here. This will make sense when I'm done. I'm not going to explain it until I finish it. I'm going to bump that up to 20 to 30. I'm going to drag these in here. All right, now let's see what we have. Little bit more manageable, but I want somewhere in the in-between because I want it to really grab your attention. So I want all of these to be 15. Make sure it's all zeros except for 15. And then I'm going to bring them into this timeline. Beautiful. So what you're seeing, just to explain this a little bit, and let me just double check that these are actually the proper sizes. Yeah, they're good. Make sure I'm looking at the number up in the top left to make sure they're all at 100. They are. So this is a leaf scanned in at full color, and then this is inverted color. And I love what our brains do when looking at patterns when you invert color. So right now I've been working a lot with inverted color to try and see new detail in the images. But you can see these two are the same image, just flipped. And so for this one, I think I might want to do a video transition and make sure that you don't have anything typed in so that everything shows. I'm going to use a cross dissolve. I'm going to apply that in between, and I'm going to drag it so it's really small. And then I want to see how that feels. Yeah, that feels nice. So just like some really subtle effects, you can either use cross dissolve. The other one is dip to black. Those are the two that I like to transition between slides. But I just wanted to show that there are some transitions you can apply. I'd stay away from wipe, from page peel. Those are really kitschy. Let me show you what that looks like. See how it peeled across the page? Really dumb. This one is barn doors. So for social media, that could be okay. A lot of times on social, you'll see people kind of swiping across to reveal what's behind. And then you can always change the duration here. You can just drag this out, and then wipe across and limit that. So it just looks like this. And then you have a post ready to go. And then you can always copy, paste, and reverse it. So create a slightly longer video, do a wipe, but then you're going to want to look at this wipe and reverse it, which just check that little box. Now let's see what happens. So we're bouncing and we're there, and then it didn't bounce back. We can delete that one. That's why. It's a lot of troubleshooting and just kind of like playing around, knowing the tools well enough that you feel good about how to play them. And then that's a pretty good post to be able to talk about, like, what does your eye see when you take a look at these patterns, to me, that's interesting. So then I'd export that again. Here's a square video. Maybe it's just a story. Maybe it's not a post. Depends on how you feel about it. So I'd love to stop the presentation at this point and take some questions if anyone's still here and interested in the nuances of video editing.
All right, thank you so much, Charlie. Now, before we do dive into the questions, if you do have some, please feel free to submit them via the question field in your control panel. We've got a lot of thank yous and a lot of very interesting comments, and we have plenty of people still on the line, but not a lot of questions, unfortunately, Charlie.
That's
so
fine.
I'm going to throw it back to you for some closing comments.
Well, thanks for hanging in there with me. I'll do a more natural history webinar in the future. But I think for me, if I had seen a video like this as a professional photographer trying to figure out how do I get my work seen, I hope this was helpful for you to be able to think about how to edit videos and get that out, more eyes on your photographs. So thanks for tuning in.
Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.